Well, I know, and the government knows, how important the racing industry is to the New Zealand economy. It's around $1.6 billion coming in each year, about 170 million in export revenue, and we employ about 17,000 full-time equivalents, and if you add in all the other supporters that are involved on a voluntary basis, I think it gets up to around 40 or 50,000. So hugely important industry, probably puts it on level pegging with the wine industry and the seafood industry, so hugely important to our economy. Well, my role as Minister of Racing is to be a champion of the racing industry, to do the board appointments. Now, you'll be aware that we've got pretty much a new board that's just starting off under the leadership of Dr. Alan Jackson as the chair. We've got a new chief executive that's just been appointed, Chris Bayliss. So in essence, it's a pretty fresh approach. Now, my day-to-day contact is involved with the chair of the racing board. I've set some strategic goals for them, and I look forward to getting on the road with the chair and the chief executive in the next month or two on a bit of a heartland tour to connect with the industry and hear any issues that they may have. I think there are plenty of issues right across the board with the racing industry, whether it's with greyhounds, whether it's with harness being affected by the Canterbury earthquakes, whether it's thoroughbreds. At the end of the day, probably a few too many tracks in thoroughbred. There's a strategy that the thoroughbred industry have been working on. It's great to see the codes come together more, working a bit more in harmony. At the end of the day, as Minister, I can be supportive, I can be facilitative, but at the end of the day, the industry has to sort out some of their challenges. And my view of the industry is they realise that they have got challenges and they are starting to address them. So what we've said about Mr Flavell's private members bill is we would support it to the select committee, and we've made no further decisions about supporting it thereafter. So right now there are thousands of submissions that have come in, my understanding. I think the three codes are going to be submitting in the next couple of weeks to the select committee. Part of Mr Flavell's bill will really affect the racing industry, and that's where, Minister, I have some concerns. But as a former Minister of Internal Affairs, there are too many rorts in the Class 4 gaming societies, and they need to stop, because whether now with Mr Flavell's bill or in the future, there will need to be some legislative reform. And that's, we need to wait, hear those submissions and form up the National Party's view as to where we go from here. Yeah, early indications, the figures that I've seen is it's somewhere between $6 and $10 million, money that goes through from Class 4 gaming societies into stake money, and that was set up in the 2003 Act. So yes, that would be a concern if that money disappeared, and we need to work through very carefully with Mr Flavell's bill or any former approaches, any future approaches as to where this delicate discussion ends up. Oh, when the Prime Minister rang me in December and asked me to be the Minister of Racing, I was really excited. It's a very important industry. It's important to my electorate up in the Otaki area, and I have a farming background, so I understand the dedication that people have to put in, whether it's the trainers, the breeders, the jockeys, the apprentices that we've seen on the stage here tonight doing a fantastic job. So it's great to be here to be involved and to acknowledge success and dedication that we see on the stage here tonight, and I'd just like to take the opportunity to congratulate all the recipients this evening. Oh, occasionally I have a bit of a flutter. Yeah, I watch and follow a few things with interest. So yeah, it's an important part of the New Zealand society to be a bit interested in whether it's sport or racing, or think, oh well, I might have a go here. And there's a lot of people out there that are very interested and follow whether it's horses or sport events and have a bet here and there.
So we should be watching your blog or your Twitter account for any tips coming up in the future? What's the story?
You won't get too many sure bets from me.